It was another long morning for Emily, a young waitress working in a small-town diner on the edge of the city. The sun had barely risen, but she was already wiping tables, brewing coffee, and greeting customers with a tired smile. Emily wasn't rich. In fact, she was barely getting by. Her life was a mix of long shifts, late nights, and never-ending worries. But no matter how difficult things got, she always tried to stay kind, polite, and hopeful. Emily lived in a tiny apartment with her mother, who had been sick for months. Her mom needed medicine and regular checkups, and that cost more money than Emily could make in a week. Most of the time, she skipped her own meals just so she could afford her mother's prescriptions. Her shoes were worn out, her phone had a cracked screen, and she hadn't bought anything new for herself in a very long time. But if anyone asked how she was doing, she would simply smile and say, "I'm fine, thank you." Her coworkers often wondered how she managed to stay so positive. The diner wasn't the best place to work. The pay was low, the manager was strict, and some customers could be rude or demanding. But Emily believed that every day was a new chance, a new beginning. She thought that even a small act of kindness could make someone's day a little brighter. That belief kept her going, even when she was exhausted. The diner itself was old but cozy. Red leather seats, a jukebox in the corner, and the smell of freshly made pancakes floating through the air. It was the kind of place where regulars came for coffee and conversation. Emily knew most of them by name. There was Mr. Johnson, the retired teacher who loved black coffee and crossword puzzles, and Mrs. Lee, who always ordered pie but never finished it. They all liked Emily because she treated everyone with respect. Every morning, she tied her hair into a neat ponytail, put on her apron, and told herself, "You can do this." It didn't matter if she was tired or worried. She had to keep going, not just for herself, but for her mother. Sometimes, when she had a minute to rest, she would look out the diner's big window and dream of a better life. Maybe one day she could go back to school or travel or open her own bakery. But for now, those dreams felt far away. The manager, Mr. Clark, was a man who cared more about money than people. He always told the staff to work faster, smile more, and never give anything away for free. "We're running a business here, not a charity," he would often say. Emily listened but didn't always agree. She believed kindness wasn't weakness, it was strength. Still, she didn't argue. She couldn't afford to lose her job. That morning had started like any other. The diner was busy, and Emily rushed from table to table, refilling coffee cups and taking orders. Her feet hurt, but she didn't complain. She had learned long ago that hard work was the only way to survive. Around noon, she finally got a short break. She sat down in the kitchen corner, pulled out her phone, and saw a message from the hospital. Another reminder about an unpaid bill. Her heart sank, but she quickly put the phone away before anyone could see her sad expression. Her friend Mia, another waitress, noticed and said, "You okay, Em?" Emily smiled faintly and replied, "Yeah, just tired, that's all." But inside she was scared. What if she couldn't pay next month's rent? What if her mom's health got worse? She didn't have answers, but she refused to give up. She had faced worse days before and made it through. When her break ended, she went back to work with the same smile as always. Customers greeted her warmly, and she made sure to serve everyone with care. She took pride in doing her job well, even if no one noticed. But deep down, she sometimes wished that life would give her a small sign, some proof that all her struggles meant something. As the clock ticked toward lunchtime, the diner filled up again. Emily was back on her feet, carrying trays and pouring coffee like a professional. Yet, beneath her calm surface, her thoughts wandered. She thought about her mother waiting at home, probably too tired to eat. She thought about how much she missed painting, something she used to love before life became about survival. And she thought about kindness, how even when she felt invisible, being kind made her feel alive. Emily didn't know that today was going to be different. She had no idea that someone sitting quietly in the corner booth was watching her. Someone whose life was completely different from hers. But for now, she was just a tired waitress doing her best to get through another day, one smile at a time. Outside, the sky turned gray as clouds gathered. Rain started to fall, tapping softly against the diner windows. The sound mixed with the soft hum of conversation and clinking dishes. Emily liked the rain. It made the world feel calm for a moment. She took a deep breath and kept serving customers, unaware that this ordinary day was about to change her life forever. For Emily, every day felt like a test of patience, strength, and kindness. But she never failed it. Even when no one thanked her, even when life seemed unfair, she kept believing that good things happen to good people. And somewhere, deep in her heart, she hoped that one day, all her kindness would come back to her, in ways she couldn't yet imagine. What she didn't know was that fate was already preparing a surprise. A stranger in the corner seat, sipping his coffee quietly, had noticed everything. Her tired smile, her gentle tone, and the way she treated every person with care. In just a few hours, Emily's life would take a turn she never expected. All because she stayed kind when she had every reason not to. The next day at the diner started quietly. The rain from the night before had left the streets wet and shiny, and the smell of coffee filled the small restaurant. Emily arrived early as usual, her hair tied back neatly, her uniform freshly washed but faded from too many rinses. She took a deep breath before stepping inside, trying to leave her worries at the door. Her mother had another doctor's appointment that week, and Emily was already thinking about how she would cover the bill. But there was no time to think too much. The morning rush was about to begin. She went about her work with her usual energy, greeting customers, serving pancakes, and refilling coffee cups. People liked her gentle smile and polite way of speaking. Even when she was tired, Emily tried to make everyone feel welcome. To her, being kind didn't cost anything. It was around lunchtime when something unusual happened. The door opened with a soft creak, and a man stepped in from the cold. He looked older, maybe in his late 50s, with a rough beard and tired eyes. His clothes were worn out, his shoes soaked with rain, and his hands trembled slightly as he rubbed them together for warmth. A few customers turned their heads, then quickly looked away. The man stood by the door for a moment, as if unsure whether he should enter. Emily noticed him right away. She could tell from his face that he hadn't eaten in a while. She walked over gently and said, "Hello, sir. Would you like to sit down and get warm?" The man hesitated, his voice low and shaky. I don't have any money," he admitted, looking down at the floor. "I just wanted to ask if I could get a cup of coffee. I'll pay you back someday." Before Emily could reply, the manager, Mr. Clark, appeared behind the counter. He frowned when he saw the man. "Emily," he said in a sharp tone, "we can't have people like that taking up tables. Tell him to move along." Emily's heart sank. She looked at the homeless man. His clothes were soaked, his eyes full of sadness and embarrassment. "Please, sir," the man whispered. "I'll be gone in a minute. Just need to warm up." Emily turned to her manager and said softly, "It's raining outside. Let him stay for a bit. I'll handle it." Mr. Clark sighed in annoyance. "Fine," he said. "But make sure he doesn't disturb anyone." He walked away, shaking his head. Emily led the man to a booth near the heater, the warmest spot in the diner. She gave him a towel to dry his hands and said, "I'll bring you that coffee." The man nodded, his voice trembling. "Thank you, miss. You're very kind." She went behind the counter, poured a fresh cup of hot coffee, and placed it in front of him. The smell made his eyes water. He held the cup gently, as if afraid it might be taken away. "It's been days since I had something warm," he murmured. Emily smiled and said, "Then today's your lucky day." As she watched him take small sips, her heart ached. The man reminded her of her father, who had passed away when she was a child. A good man who had also fallen on hard times. Without thinking twice, she walked back to the kitchen and quietly ordered a bowl of soup and toast. When the cook handed it to her, she slipped a few dollar bills from her own pocket onto the counter to pay for it. Carrying the tray to his table, she said cheerfully, "Here you go. You can't just drink coffee on an empty stomach." The man looked at the food, his eyes wide with surprise. "Miss, I didn't order this," he began. Emily interrupted softly, It's okay. This one's on me. The man's voice cracked. Why would you do that? You don't even know me. Emily smiled, a little shy but kind. Because everyone deserves a warm meal once in a while. You looked like you needed one. Tears filled the man's eyes as he picked up his spoon. I can't remember the last time someone was kind to me, he said quietly. Thank you. Emily nodded, then went back to work, pretending not to notice the few customers who were whispering or staring. What Emily didn't realize was that someone else was watching. A man sitting alone in the far corner booth. He was dressed in a dark suit, with polished shoes and a quiet presence. While everyone else ignored the homeless man, he had seen everything. The hesitation, the kindness, the genuine care in Emily's eyes. He watched her pay for the meal without saying a word to anyone. The homeless man ate slowly, savoring every bite as if it were the best meal he had ever tasted. Every few minutes, he glanced toward Emily with gratitude. When he finished, he stood up carefully, folded his hands together, and walked over to her. Miss, he said, I don't have much, but I want to thank you. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small coin, old and rusty. It's not worth much, but it's all I have. Maybe it'll bring you luck. Emily smiled warmly and said, You keep it. You need it more than I do. The man looked at her for a moment, then nodded slowly. You're an angel, he whispered before leaving. As the door closed behind him, Emily felt both happy and sad. Happy that she could help even a little. Sad because she knew the world wasn't kind to people like him. She didn't expect anything in return. To her, kindness was its own reward. But in that corner booth, the man in the suit quietly placed his cup down and smiled for the first time that day. He had seen something rare, real goodness without an audience. He picked up the bill, pulled out a sleek black credit card, and signaled for the manager. I'll take care of everything, he said. Emily didn't notice. She was busy cleaning tables and refilling coffee cups, completely unaware that her small act of kindness had just caught the attention of a man who could change her life forever. Outside, the rain had stopped, and a soft light filtered through the diner's windows. The world looked a little brighter. Maybe because in that small corner of it, kindness had just found a way to shine. Emily stood near the counter, wiping it clean while the smell of fresh coffee filled the air. The lunch rush was almost over, and she finally had a moment to breathe. The homeless man sat quietly in the corner, eating slowly as if afraid the food might disappear if he finished too fast. Every few minutes, Emily looked over to make sure he was okay. Her co-workers whispered among themselves, some shaking their heads. They didn't understand why she bothered. To them, it was just another random stranger who couldn't pay. But to Emily, it was something more. She saw a person, someone who deserved kindness, not judgment. The man finished his soup and toast, then held the warm coffee cup in both hands like it was a treasure. When Emily walked over to check on him, he smiled softly. Miss, I don't know how to thank you, he said, his voice gentle but tired. You've done more for me today than most people have in years. Emily smiled and replied, You don't have to thank me. Just stay warm and take care of yourself. The man nodded, his eyes full of emotion. I used to have a job, he began. A family too. But life has a funny way of taking things away from you when you least expect it. Emily listened quietly, not rushing him. I'm sorry, she said softly. I hope things get better for you. He smiled sadly. You're the first person who said that to me in a long time. At that moment, a small sound came from the corner booth, the sound of a cup being placed on the saucer. A tall man in an expensive dark suit sat there, reading something on his phone. He had been there for almost an hour, quietly eating his meal. No one paid much attention to him, but he had noticed everything that happened. Every word, every gesture, every bit of kindness that Emily had shown to the homeless man. He saw it all. The man's name was Donovan Hale, though no one in the diner knew that. He was a billionaire investor, the kind of man who owned multiple companies, including the very restaurant chain where Emily worked. He was used to boardrooms, contracts, and people pretending to be nice because of his money. But what he had just witnessed was something he hadn't seen in years. Genuine kindness. He watched as Emily talked gently to the homeless man, not out of pity, but with respect. He saw how she took money from her own pocket to pay for the food, even though it was clear she didn't have much herself. Most people wouldn't have bothered, but she did. Emily went back to the counter, unaware that someone was watching her closely. Her manager, Mr. Clark, was counting the day's sales when he noticed something strange on the bill. "Who ordered soup and toast without a charge?" he asked, frowning. Emily froze. She had hoped he wouldn't notice so soon. "That was me," she said quietly. "I paid for it myself." Mr. Clark slammed his pen down. "Emily, we've talked about this before. You can't just give away food. This is a business, not a charity." His voice was loud enough for the customers to hear. The homeless man looked down in shame, whispering, "I'm sorry, miss. I didn't mean to get you in trouble." Emily shook her head quickly. "It's okay," she told him. "You did nothing wrong." The manager sighed angrily. "I'm deducting that amount from your paycheck," he said sharply. "And don't do it again, or I'll have to let you go." Emily's heart sank, but she didn't argue. "Yes, sir," she replied softly. Donovan Hale watched this entire scene unfold. He felt something stir inside him, anger at how the manager treated her, and admiration for how calmly Emily handled it. Most people would have snapped back, but she didn't. She simply accepted it, choosing peace over pride. That told him more about her character than any resume ever could. The homeless man stood up slowly, tears in his eyes. "You're a good person, miss," he said quietly. "I'll never forget this." Emily smiled, though her eyes were wet. "Take care of yourself," she whispered. He nodded and walked out into the rain, disappearing into the gray afternoon. The diner felt strangely quiet after he left. Emily went back to wiping tables, pretending nothing had happened, though her mind was heavy. She thought about how unfair life was sometimes, how doing the right thing could still bring punishment. But she didn't regret what she'd done. Helping someone who needed it felt right, no matter the cost. In the corner, Donovan took a sip of his coffee, his eyes following Emily as she worked. He saw the sadness behind her smile, the quiet strength in her movements. He thought about his own past, how his mother had once worked in a small diner just like this one, struggling to raise him after his father left. She had done the same thing once, given a free meal to a hungry man. And just like Emily, she had been scolded for it. That memory hit him like a wave. Donovan leaned back in his chair, thinking deeply. He realized that people like Emily were rare, people who chose kindness even when no one was watching. In his world, where everything was about profit and reputation, that kind of goodness was almost forgotten. But here it was, alive and real in this small diner. When Emily came over to collect his empty plate, she gave her usual polite smile. "Did you enjoy your meal, sir?" she asked. Donovan looked up at her and nodded. "Yes," he said quietly. "It was perfect. Thank you." She smiled again, not knowing that the man she was speaking to owned the very company that paid her salary. As she walked away, Donovan reached into his wallet and took out a sleek black card, one that could buy almost anything. He placed it under the bill with a small note scribbled on a napkin. Then he stood up, adjusted his coat, and walked out without another word. Emily didn't see the note until a few minutes later. She picked up the bill and noticed the heavy black credit card underneath it. The note read, "For someone who remembers what kindness means. DH." She looked around, confused, but the man in the suit was gone. Her heart raced as she held the card in her hand, not understanding what had just happened. She didn't know who he was or why he left it, but something told her that her simple act of kindness had just started something extraordinary, something that was about to change her life in ways she could never imagine. Donovan Hale sat in his black car outside the diner, staring through the rain-covered window. He hadn't planned to stop there that day. In fact, he had been on his way to a meeting in the city when his driver took a wrong turn. He had decided to take a break, have a simple lunch, and catch up on some emails. But what he witnessed inside that small diner had left a stronger impression on him than any business meeting ever could. As his driver waited silently, Donovan replayed the scene in his mind, the way the young waitress had treated the homeless man. She hadn't hesitated, hadn't judged, and hadn't expected anything in return. She just saw someone in need and helped. It reminded him of something he hadn't thought about in years, his own past. Before the world knew him as Mr. Hale, the billionaire investor, he had been a boy growing up in a poor neighborhood with a single mother. His mother, Clara, worked as a waitress in a small cafe, much like the one he had just visited. She worked long hours, often skipping her own meals to feed him. Donovan still remembered sitting at the corner table of that cafe, doing his homework while she served customers with a smile that hid her exhaustion. One cold winter evening, when Donovan was only 10, a man had come into the cafe asking for food. He was homeless, tired, and clearly hungry. The manager had ordered him to leave, but Clara had quietly served him a bowl of soup anyway. When the manager found out, she was scolded and nearly fired. That night, she came home crying. But when Donovan asked her why she did it, she said, "Because kindness is worth more than money, son. One day you'll understand." Now, decades later, sitting in the back seat of his luxury car, Donovan finally understood what she meant. Seeing Emily help that homeless man, even when it cost her something, had touched something deep inside him. She reminded him of his mother. Humble, hardworking, and full of quiet strength. He asked his driver to wait a moment longer. Through the fogged window, he could still see Emily inside, cleaning tables, smiling at customers, pretending everything was fine. But he had noticed the way her shoulders tensed when the manager yelled at her. He could tell she was tired, not just from work, but from life itself. Yet, she still chose kindness. He thought about how people like Emily rarely got noticed. They worked silently, helping others, while the world rewarded those who looked out only for themselves. Donovan was a man who had everything: wealth, power, influence, but he suddenly realized he had lost touch with what really mattered. For years, his world had been built on numbers, contracts, and competition. He had built his empire by being tough and calculated. But seeing Emily's selflessness made him think of something he hadn't felt in a long time: compassion. It was strange how a simple act of kindness could change the way he saw things. He decided he couldn't just leave. He wanted to know more about her. Not to interfere, but to understand what kind of person still lived with that kind of heart in such a cold world. He called his assistant and said, "Find out who that waitress is. Her name is Emily. She works at the Riverside Diner." His assistant sounded confused. "Of course, sir. Should I prepare something for her?" Donovan paused. "Not yet. Just gather some background information. And don't let anyone know." He ended the call and leaned back in his seat. The rain had slowed to a drizzle. For the first time in years, Donovan didn't feel like rushing anywhere. He just sat there, lost in thought, remembering his mother's words echoing in his mind. Kindness is worth more than money. Inside the diner, Emily was finishing her shift. She didn't know that the man who had been sitting in the corner, the quiet one with the kind eyes, was a billionaire. To her, he was just another customer. When she found the black card and the note he had left behind, she thought it must have been a mistake. Maybe he left it there by accident. But when she read the message, for someone who remembers what kindness means, she felt a strange warmth in her chest. She didn't use the card. She simply put it in her apron pocket and went back to work. She didn't know that the man who had written those words was sitting in a car outside, watching her with deep respect. Later that evening, Donovan's car pulled away from the diner, but his thoughts stayed there. As he drove through the city lights, he couldn't shake off the image of Emily's tired but genuine smile. He had spent millions on charity and business projects over the years, but none of them had moved him the way that one simple act had. When he reached his office that night, his assistant had already sent over a file about the diner. Donovan learned that Emily had been working there for over 3 years. Her record was spotless. Always on time, never complained, and often covered extra shifts for coworkers. She lived in a small apartment downtown with her sick mother. Most of her income went toward medical bills. She had no debts, no luxuries, and no vacations. Just a simple, honest life. Donovan read everything carefully, then closed the file. He felt something he hadn't felt in years, admiration mixed with sadness. He had met countless people in his life, from CEOs to politicians, but very few had made him stop and think about the kind of person he wanted to be. Emily did that without even trying. He looked out the tall glass window of his office, the city skyline glittering below him. He thought of his mother again, and for the first time in years, he whispered a quiet thank you to her memory. Then he smiled, a rare, genuine smile that surprised even himself. The next morning, he made a decision. He would visit the diner again, not as a billionaire, not as a CEO, but as a man who wanted to say thank you. Not just for the kindness Emily showed to that homeless man, but for reminding him of something he had almost forgotten. That goodness still existed, even in the smallest corners of the world. And while Emily had no idea what was about to happen, fate was already turning its wheels. Her life, which had been so ordinary, was about to change in ways she could never have imagined. All because of one meal, one stranger, and one act of pure kindness. The next morning at the diner started like any other. The smell of butter and coffee filled the air, and the sound of clinking plates echoed through the small space. Emily tied her apron, tucked her hair behind her ears, and forced a smile. She had hardly slept the night before. Her mind kept replaying what had happened. The homeless man, her manager's anger, and that strange black card left behind by the quiet customer in the corner. She had never seen a card like that before. It looked expensive, too expensive for someone like her to even touch. The note that came with it still echoed in her head. For someone who remembers what kindness means. She didn't tell anyone about it. She wasn't sure what to do. Part of her thought it might have been a mistake. Maybe the man left it behind by accident. But another part of her felt that it was meant for her. Still, she tucked it away in her drawer at home and decided not to think too much about it. At the diner, things went on as usual, or at least that's how it seemed. The regular customers came in for breakfast, chatting about weather and work. Emily greeted them with her usual warmth, though inside, she still felt heavy. She couldn't stop thinking about how her manager, Mr. Clark, had yelled at her for helping that poor man. She hadn't even cared about the deduction from her pay. What really hurt was how coldly he had treated her, as if kindness was a crime. Around mid-morning, the door opened, and to Emily's surprise, the same homeless man from the day before stood there again. But this time he looked different. His clothes were cleaner, his hair combed, and there was a light in his eyes. He smiled shyly when he saw Emily. "Good morning, miss," he said, his voice softer now. "I just wanted to say thank you again. Yesterday meant more to me than you'll ever know." Emily smiled warmly. "I'm glad to see you again. How are you feeling?" "Better," he replied. "A kind man helped me get a room for the night after I left here. Said he saw what you did for me. Bought me dinner too." Emily blinked in surprise. "Really? That's wonderful." The man nodded. "He told me people like you are rare. Said you'd changed his day." Before Emily could ask more, the manager, Mr. Clark, appeared from the back. His expression darkened when he saw the homeless man. "You again?" he snapped. "Sir, we can't have you hanging around here." The man quickly raised his hands. "I'm sorry, sir. I just came to thank the lady. I'm not staying." Mr. Clark folded his arms. "Then make it quick." Emily stepped forward. "It's fine, Mr. Clark. He's not bothering anyone." Her boss gave her a cold glare. "Emily, I told you yesterday this is a business. If you keep treating this place like a charity, you'll find yourself out of a job." The customers nearby turned quiet. Emily felt her cheeks grow hot, but she didn't back down this time. "He just wanted to say thank you," she said firmly. "That's all." Mr. Clark rolled his eyes. "You're too soft-hearted. That's your problem. The world doesn't pay people for kindness." Emily didn't reply. She just looked at the homeless man and gave him a kind smile. "It's okay. I understand," she whispered. The man nodded gratefully. "Thank you again," he said before walking out. The bell on the diner door jingled softly as he disappeared outside. Mr. Clark turned to Emily. "Next time, don't let something like this happen again. You're here to serve paying customers, not strays. Emily felt something break inside her. She had worked there for 3 years, never late, never rude, never careless. And yet, she was treated like she was doing something wrong just for being kind. She wanted to cry, but she held it in. As she went back to wiping the tables, she didn't notice the man who had just entered the diner. It was Donovan Hale. He wore the same dark suit, his hair perfectly in place, and his sharp eyes scanning the room. This time he wasn't just passing by, he had come with a purpose. He watched the scene quietly from the doorway. Emily standing with her head slightly bowed, her manager glaring at her, and the customers pretending not to see. It was the same pattern he had seen all his life, good people being scolded for doing the right thing. He took a seat in his usual corner booth, and when Emily turned around, she recognized him immediately. "Oh, you're back," she said politely, though her voice carried a hint of surprise. "Yes," he replied calmly. "I enjoyed the food yesterday. Thought I'd come again." Emily smiled faintly and handed him a menu. "Would you like the same as before?" "That would be perfect," he said, his tone kind. She nodded and walked away to place the order, unaware that Mr. Clark had recognized the man too. When the manager saw the black luxury car parked outside, his eyes widened. He had seen the name on the credit card slip yesterday, Donovan Hale. It was the name of the billionaire who owned the entire restaurant chain. Suddenly, his attitude changed completely. He rushed to Donovan's table, bowing slightly. "Good afternoon, sir. It's an honor to have you back. If there's anything you need, please let me know personally." Donovan looked up slowly, his face unreadable. "Thank you," he said, "but I'm being well taken care of by your waitress." The manager swallowed hard and stepped back. Emily, who had just brought the order, looked confused. She had no idea who Donovan really was. Donovan took a sip of his coffee and spoke softly. "Rough morning." Emily sighed quietly. "Just a misunderstanding. It's fine. Part of the job." He looked at her carefully. "You don't seem the type to complain." She gave a small smile. "Complaining doesn't pay the bills." Donovan admired her composure. Most people would have broken down or quit after being scolded like that. But she just kept going, doing her job with quiet dignity. He could see she was strong. Not because life was easy for her, but because she refused to let hardship change her heart. Mr. Clark, meanwhile, watched nervously from the counter, trying to guess what the billionaire might do. He didn't know that Donovan had seen everything. Every cruel word, every moment of disrespect. When Donovan finished his meal, he placed his card on the table again. But this time he didn't leave immediately. He looked up at Emily and said, "I'd like to speak with you for a minute, if that's all right." Emily blinked, surprised. "Of course," she said. As she stood by his table, he smiled kindly. "You have a good heart," he said simply. "Don't ever let anyone make you feel bad for that." She didn't understand what he meant, but those words felt like a small light inside her. For the first time that day, she felt seen. She had no idea that the man speaking to her wasn't just another customer. He was the billionaire owner of the restaurant, and he was about to turn her whole world upside down. That night, Emily sat in her small apartment, staring at the black card lying on her kitchen table. Still didn't feel real. The man she had served at the diner, Donovan Hale, was not just a customer. He was the owner of the restaurant chain, a billionaire, and he had asked her to come see him at his company the next morning. She could hardly believe it. Her mind was racing. Why would a man like him want to see her? Was she in trouble? Or maybe he was going to fire her personally because of the scene with Mr. Clark. But then she remembered his words. "You have a good heart. Don't ever let anyone make you feel bad for that." Those didn't sound like the words of someone who wanted to punish her. Still, she was nervous. She looked down at her clothes. Her uniform was faded, and her shoes were old. She had nothing fancy to wear, nothing that would look right in a billionaire's office. After thinking for a while, she took her time washing and ironing her neatest outfit, a simple blue dress she saved for special occasions. She didn't have much, but she decided she would go with dignity. The next morning, she took a bus downtown. Her stomach was tight with worry and curiosity. She clutched her small purse, whispering to herself, It's going to be fine, Emily. Just be polite. When she arrived at the tall glass building with the name, Hale Enterprises, written in silver letters, she froze for a second. The building was huge, bigger than anything she'd ever entered before. People in expensive suits walked in and out, looking important and confident. She felt completely out of place. At the reception desk, a woman in a crisp uniform smiled professionally. "Good morning. How may I help you?" My name is Emily Carter," she said nervously. "Mr. Donovan Hale asked me to come today." The woman's eyes widened slightly, and she stood up. "Oh, yes, Ms. Carter. Mr. Hale has been expecting you. Please, come with me." Emily followed her through wide hallways decorated with art and flowers. The air smelled clean, expensive, and quiet, so different from the noisy diner she worked in. Every step echoed softly on the marble floor. Her heart thumped faster. When the woman opened a door to a large office, Emily almost gasped. The room had floor-to-ceiling windows showing the entire city. The furniture was sleek and modern, and behind a massive wooden desk sat Donovan Hale himself. He looked up with a kind smile as she entered. "Emily," he said warmly, "I'm glad you came." She nodded quickly. "Thank you for inviting me, sir." "Please sit down," he said, gesturing to a chair across from him. Emily sat, her hands resting nervously in her lap. She didn't know where to look. Donovan leaned forward slightly. "I imagine you're wondering why I asked you here." She nodded again. "Yes, sir. I was surprised." He smiled faintly. "I don't blame you. What happened yesterday at the diner, it told me a lot about who you are. You didn't know who I was, yet you still showed kindness, even when it cost you something. Not many people would do that these days." Emily blushed and looked down. "I just couldn't let that man go hungry. He looked like he hadn't eaten in days." "That's exactly what I mean," Donovan said. "You acted with compassion, not because you wanted something in return, but because it was the right thing to do." She felt her throat tighten. "Most people think it's foolish," she said softly. "Then most people are wrong," he replied gently. There was a pause, and then Donovan leaned back in his chair. "Emily, I built my business from nothing. I was once as poor as that man you helped. I slept in my car for 2 years, eating whatever I could afford. The only reason I survived was because a stranger once helped me without expecting anything back. That act of kindness changed my life. It reminded me that good people still exist. You reminded me of that stranger." Emily's eyes widened. I had no idea." He nodded. "Most people don't. But I never forgot what it felt like to have nothing. That's why I believe in rewarding goodness when I see it." He opened a drawer and placed a small envelope on the table. "This is for you," he said. Emily looked at it hesitantly. "What is it?" "Open it," he said with a smile. Inside was a check. When she saw the amount, her breath caught. It was far more than she could have ever imagined. Enough to pay off her debts, fix her car, and maybe even go back to school. "I can't take this," she said, shaking her head. "It's too much." Donovan smiled. "It's not a gift. It's an investment." "An investment?" she repeated, confused. He nodded. "I've seen many people with money, talent, and ambition, but very few with heart. You, Emily, have what truly matters. I'd like to offer you a job. Not as a waitress, but as part of my company's community outreach program. You'd help manage projects that support shelters, food drives, and people who are struggling, people like the man you helped." Emily's eyes filled with tears. "You mean, you want to hire me?" "Yes," he said simply. "If you'll accept." She covered her mouth with her hand. "I don't know what to say." "Say yes," he said with a kind smile. "And promise me one thing. Never stop being kind, no matter how hard life gets." Emily nodded quickly, tears slipping down her cheeks. "Yes, sir. I promise." For a moment, neither of them spoke. She could feel the weight of the moment, how one small act of kindness had turned her entire life around. Donovan stood and extended his hand. "Welcome to the team, Emily." She stood too, her heart pounding as she shook his hand. "Thank you. I won't let you down." As she left the building later that day, Emily looked up at the sky and smiled. The world suddenly felt brighter, bigger, and full of hope. The same world that had pushed her down for years had finally lifted her up, and it all began with one small act of kindness. She thought of the homeless man she had helped and whispered, "Maybe this is what you meant when you said I'd changed someone's day." For the first time in a long while, Emily didn't feel like a struggling waitress. She felt like someone who mattered, someone who had a future, someone whose kindness had come full circle. The next few weeks passed like a dream for Emily. Everything in her life began to change, slowly but beautifully. She still couldn't believe she now worked for a billionaire, and not just any billionaire, but one who believed in kindness, compassion, and giving back to others. Donovan Hale had kept his promise. He placed her in a role at his company's community outreach program, a job that felt made just for her. Every morning, she woke up excited instead of tired. She no longer had to rush to the noisy diner with aching feet and a forced smile. Instead, she walked into a bright, welcoming office filled with people who shared the same purpose, helping those in need. Her job was to organize food drives, visit shelters, and arrange meals for the homeless. It was hard work, but this time it didn't drain her. It gave her life meaning. Her coworkers liked her instantly. She wasn't fancy like them, but she was real, humble, caring, and always ready to help. They admired how she treated everyone with respect, from the janitor to the directors. Donovan noticed this too. Every time she spoke in a meeting or shared an idea, she did it with heart. She didn't use complicated business words. She spoke with sincerity, and somehow that made everyone listen. One day, after a long meeting, Donovan asked her to stay behind. "You've been doing amazing work, Emily," he said, smiling. "The shelters you helped organize are running better than ever. I've received letters from people you've helped. They all mention your name." Emily's cheeks turned pink. "Thank you, sir. But it's not just me. Everyone here works hard." He chuckled. "True. But leadership isn't about who does the most work. It's about who inspires others to care. You do that naturally." She looked down shyly. "I just want people to feel less alone." Donovan leaned back in his chair. "You know, that's exactly how great things start, with someone who cares." As she left his office, she felt a warm glow inside. For the first time in years, she felt proud of herself. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was making a difference. But life, as Emily knew too well, always had surprises, good and bad. One evening, as she was finishing her work, a security guard came into her office. "Miss Emily, there's someone asking for you at the lobby," he said. "Me?" she asked, confused. "Yes, a man says he knows you." When she reached the lobby, her heart stopped for a second. It was the same homeless man she had helped at the diner, the one who had changed everything. But now he looked even better. He wore clean clothes, his beard was trimmed, and his eyes were bright. "Tom?" she said, recognizing him. He smiled widely. "You remember my name?" "Of course I do," she said warmly. "You look so different. How are you doing?" "I'm doing good," he said proudly. "I've been staying at the shelter your company runs. They helped me get a small job, too. I came to say thank you. You and Mr. Hale changed my life." Emily's eyes filled with tears. "That makes me so happy to hear, Tom. You deserve a good life." He nodded. "I also wanted to tell you something. I didn't know who that man was when he helped me that day. He gave me money, clothes, and told me to get back on my feet. He said someone special had reminded him that kindness is still alive. That someone was you." Emily smiled softly, her heart full. "He gave me a chance too. We were both lucky that day." Tom laughed. "Maybe it wasn't luck. Maybe it was meant to be." They talked for a while before he left, promising to come by again. As Emily watched him walk away, she realized how one simple act, a meal given out of compassion, had created a ripple effect. Her kindness had reached more people than she ever imagined. A few days later, Donovan called for a company gathering. It was held in a large hall, decorated with banners that read "Humanity First," Kindness creates change. Emily stood quietly at the back, not realizing she was about to become the center of attention. Donovan took the stage and began to speak. When we talk about success, he said, we often think about money, power, or fame. But today I want to talk about something different. Kindness. A few weeks ago, I met someone who reminded me that the smallest act of compassion can create waves that reach far beyond what we see. Emily felt her heart race as he glanced toward her. He continued, "That person is Emily Carter." The room went silent for a moment before people began to clap. Emily froze, her face turning red. She didn't know what to do. Donovan gestured for her to come forward. As she slowly made her way to the stage, Donovan smiled. Emily didn't know who I was when she helped a hungry man. She didn't think about herself. She didn't expect anything in return. But her kindness inspired me, and it inspired this company to do more for those who have less. He turned to her and said softly so only she could hear, "You started all this, Emily." Tears welled up in her eyes as she looked at the people clapping for her. For years, she had worked hard and gone unnoticed. Now, she was being celebrated for the one thing she had always believed in: kindness. Donovan handed her a small plaque. "In recognition of your compassion and dedication, I'm proud to announce that Emily Carter will now lead our new project, Hearts That Heal, a program to provide meals, housing, and hope for the homeless." The applause grew louder. Emily covered her mouth, completely overwhelmed. She couldn't stop crying, but they were happy tears. She never dreamed something like this could happen to her. After the event, Donovan came up to her again. "You've earned this, Emily," he said sincerely. "This isn't charity, it's recognition. You've reminded all of us that true success isn't about what we have, but what we give." She smiled through her tears. "Thank you, Mr. Hale. I'll do my best." "I know you will," he said, smiling. That night, when Emily got home, she sat by her window, watching the city lights. Everything looked different now, brighter, warmer, more alive. She realized that kindness had not only changed her life but also created new chances for others. From a struggling waitress to a leader making real change. All because she refused to walk away from a hungry man one ordinary afternoon. And in that quiet moment, she whispered to herself, "Kindness really does come back." Months passed, and Emily's life continued to blossom in ways she had never imagined. The Hearts That Heal project she led became one of the most successful initiatives in the city. Every week, she worked with volunteers to provide food, shelter, and training for people struggling to get back on their feet. The very same streets where she once walked home tired and hopeless were now filled with people whose lives were improving because of her work. Everywhere she went, she saw the power of kindness in action, and it made her heart full. But Emily never let success change her. She still took the bus to work, still smiled at strangers, and still treated everyone with respect. People admired her humility. Even though she now worked closely with Donovan Hale, one of the most powerful men in the country, she never acted superior or proud. She stayed the same kind, gentle woman who once bought lunch for a homeless man with her last few dollars. One day, Donovan asked Emily to meet him in his office. When she entered, she saw him standing by the window, looking out at the city. His expression was thoughtful, almost nostalgic. "Emily," he said softly, turning to face her, "do you know why I started this company?" She smiled shyly. "To make a difference, I suppose?" He chuckled lightly. "That's the goal now. But in the beginning, it was just about survival. I wanted to prove myself, to earn money, to be someone important. But after meeting you, I realized something I had forgotten. The purpose of success is not just to have more, but to help more." Emily listened quietly, her eyes warm and understanding. He continued, "Do you remember the homeless man you helped that day?" "Of course," she said. "Tom. How could I forget?" Donovan smiled. "He's doing even better now. He's working at one of our partner shelters, helping others who went through what he did. He told me last week that your kindness gave him hope when he had none left." Tears filled Emily's eyes again. "That makes me so happy. I just wanted him to know that he mattered." Donovan nodded. "You did more than that. You changed his life, and mine." There was a gentle silence between them, filled with gratitude and mutual respect. Then Donovan said something that surprised her. "Emily, I've decided to expand our outreach program to other cities, and I want you to lead it." Her mouth fell open slightly. "Me? But I'm not qualified for something that big." He smiled. "You're more than qualified. You have experience, leadership, and most importantly, compassion. That's what this mission needs." She hesitated. "It's such a big responsibility." "Exactly," he said. "And you're ready for it." Emily sat quietly for a moment, thinking. She remembered all the struggles she had faced. The long nights at the diner, the times she barely had enough to eat, the humiliation from her old manager. And now, here she was being trusted to lead a nationwide movement. Felt unreal. Finally, she smiled. "I'll do it, sir. I'll do my best." Donovan grinned. "That's all I ask." As she left his office, her heart was pounding with excitement and disbelief. She wanted to call her mother, her friends, anyone, and tell them the news. But first, she stopped by the diner where everything had started. It looked the same as ever, the neon sign buzzing faintly, the smell of coffee drifting through the air. She walked inside, and a few of the old waitresses recognized her right away. "Emily, look at you," one of them said with a laugh. "You look so different." Emily smiled warmly. "It's good to see you all again." Just then, her old manager, Mr. Clark, came out from the kitchen. His face froze when he saw her. "Emily?" he said in disbelief. "I didn't think I'd see you again." "Hi, Mr. Clark," she said politely. He cleared his throat, looking awkward. I heard about what happened. The news talked about you, the kindness project, the billionaire, all of it. Seems like you've done well for yourself." Emily smiled kindly. "I was lucky to meet good people, and I learned a lot from my time here." He looked down, guilt flickering in his eyes. "I wasn't fair to you, Emily. I'm sorry for how I treated you back then." Her smile softened. "It's all right, Mr. Clark. You taught me something important. That kindness doesn't need permission." He blinked, unsure how to respond. "You're a better person than most," he muttered. Before she left, Emily handed him a card with her organization's name on it. "If you ever want to volunteer or help someone in need, we'd love to have you." He nodded slowly. "Maybe I will." As she stepped outside, Emily felt a strange peace. It was as if she had closed a painful chapter of her life, but with grace, not bitterness. Weeks later, she stood on a stage in front of hundreds of people at a charity event. She spoke about her journey, her struggles, and how one act of kindness had started it all. The crowd listened in silence, many with tears in their eyes. "I wasn't rich," she said softly. "I wasn't special. I was just a tired waitress trying to do something good. I didn't know that helping one hungry man would change my entire life. But that's the thing about kindness. It always finds a way back to you." When she finished, the audience stood and applauded. Donovan was in the front row, smiling proudly. Tom, the man she had once helped, was beside him, clapping with tears streaming down his face. That night, as Emily looked at the city lights from her hotel window, she thought about how far she had come. She wasn't the struggling waitress anymore. She was someone who made a difference, someone who proved that no act of kindness is ever wasted. She whispered softly to herself, "If only everyone understood how powerful one good deed can be, the world would be a much better place." The stars twinkled above the skyline, as if agreeing with her. And in that quiet, peaceful moment, Emily realized she had found what she'd been searching for all along. Not wealth or fame, but purpose. Her story had come full circle. The girl who once gave her last few dollars to feed a stranger had become a woman who fed thousands. And as she drifted off to sleep that night, one thought filled her heart. Kindness had truly changed everything.